and welcome to Full Wet Formula One. I'm your host that's as useful as a full wet tire, and today I'd like to talk to you about the 2026 race start procedures. Are we cooked before the season even begins? Let's dig into it. So let's take a look at what's changed for 2026. Due to the 50-50 power split, the electrical motor and battery system will be providing a larger share of the power than last year, but with the removal of the MGU-H that provided electrical charge from the waste heat coming through the exhaust, the MGU-K will be providing all of the electrical power for the battery. What this means for race starts is the drivers will need to rev their engines for 10 seconds before the lights go out to fill their battery for the first lap. Now, 10 seconds sounds like a long time, and you may have heard your favorite YouTubers or maybe some of the Formula One media outlets talking about how this is going to affect the racing next season and if it's going to be a safety concern for the beginning of the race. Now, my first question about the 2026 race start procedure is, how's this all going to work? Are they going to allow the final driver on the grid 10 seconds once they're in their grid box before waving the green flag and the lights going out, leaving those cars at the front with rapidly cooling rubber? Are they going to start like previous years and wave the green flag just after the last car enters their grid box? Will the last car have enough time to get their charge into their battery to get off the line, or are Lance Stroll and the Cadillacs going to launch off the line with just their combustion engines? And finally, and most importantly, is 10 seconds really that different from previous years? Is that a lifetime to sit waiting on the line? Or is it more similar to what we've already seen before? To give us some insight into previous regulations, I reviewed every sprint and Grand Prix race start from the 2025 season, started a timer when the last driver stopped in their grid box, and stopped it when the lights went out. Now, I definitely don't have the reaction time of a Formula One driver, but since I have to react to the wheel stopping in the grid box and the lights going out, it should cancel each other out more or less with the data I've gathered. Excluding rolling starts, of which there was only one in Belgium last year, the shortest amount of time between the final driver entering their grid box and the lights going out was 6.74 seconds at the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. The longest amount of time with all of the cars on the grid before the lights went out was 22.89 seconds at the Qatar Grand Prix. If we're going to buy into the talk that the extra 10 seconds is far too long for the drivers at the front to wait with cooling tires, then surely we should see some correlation in Qatar with that nearly 23-second wait. But the only overtake at the front of the grid was Verstappen overtaking Norris for P2, and with Norris's history of being overtaken at race starts, I think we can take this one with a teaspoon of salt. Let's take a look at some more starts from 2025. 12 races took 10 seconds or longer from the final car stopping in their grid box to lights out, with those being China Sprint, Japan, Miami Grand Prix, Imola, Canada, Hungary, Monza, the United States Grand Prix in Austin, Brazil, and both the Qatar Sprint and the Qatar Grand Prix. If we expand that a little bit further to 9 or more seconds, we can include the China Grand Prix at 9.9 seconds, Bahrain, the British Grand Prix at 9.96 seconds, and Singapore. So half of the races we were already waiting 10 seconds or more for the race start, and over half we were waiting 9 or more seconds for the race to start. The average time between the final driver stopping in their grid box and the 5 lights going out was 10.23 seconds, but if we exclude the shortest time, 6.74 seconds in Saudi Arabia, and the longest time, 22.89 seconds in Qatar, we were left with an average time of 9.88 seconds. After looking at all of last year's race starts, it seems to me that we've been doing quite a bit of waiting around at the starting grid, and it's a bit too early to tell, but we may just not notice much of a change between 2025 and 2026 in terms of time spent spooling the cars up. Now, let's take a look at another facet of the race start that has been brought up by the likes of Oscar Piastri, Esteban Ocon, George Russell, and Pierre Gasly, and that is the turbo lag. In 2025, the MGU-H was utilized to keep the turbo spooled up at low RPMs and during race starts. This all but eliminated turbo lag and provided smooth inputs of power when cornering or starting from a stop. This year, without the MGU-H, the drivers and engineers will need to manage turbo lag themselves. There are some rumors and speculation that Ferrari have run a smaller turbo in order to counteract the turbo lag. A smaller turbo takes less time to spool due to having less mass, but provides less power at the high end, so it is possible that a trade-off was made here. I would also assume some, if not all teams, have opted to use a bit of the electrical power generated during the high rev period before the race start to fill gaps in power left by the removal of the MGU-H. I predict at the beginning of the regulation cycle there will be a wide range of solutions to this problem that will homogenize throughout the regulation cycle until we get back to a season like 2025 where the car in P1 and the car in P10 only have a tenth or two between them. And personally, I think this is good news for us. The chaos of entering the new regulation period, how the cars and drivers manage these issues will bring us some good, exciting racing. Some may be better at the race start, but they've used up their battery overtaking off the line and will be vulnerable a turn or two later for those who manage the turbo lag differently. This means more on-track overtakes, less DRS train style racing, just waiting for a pit stop to get by the car ahead, and hopefully a better expression of individual driver skill as they take on all the new energy management difficulties. And who doesn't want to see a formula where the best drivers are rewarded for expressing their skills in a sport that proclaims to be the pinnacle of motorsport? Finally, I would like to talk to a lot of the doom and gloom from drivers about energy management and racing in 2026 in general. It's kind of funny to think about, but at the end of the day, Formula One's a job. An incredibly privileged job, but a job nonetheless. Much like with any job or workplace, anytime there is change in a company or how things operate, there will be pushback. Hell, I've been guilty of this myself. I don't know about you all, but in my day job, anytime management rolls something new out, there will be grumbling and negativity throughout the workforce, just simply due to the fact that people get used to how things are and tend to resist change, regardless if it's good or bad change. There are countless studies done on the reaction to change within a workplace, but in general, you'll have some percentage of people who will just hop on board and happily make the change, a large group that will be somewhat resistant, but eventually go along with the new workflows, and another small percentage that will actively resist and attempt to keep things the way they are. I think we are seeing that in the driver interviews currently, and maybe some of that is how happy individual drivers are with where their teams are currently at in development. But surely some of it is just the natural resistance to change most of us feel. We've seen this time and again at the beginning of a new regulation cycle, but as we get deeper into these regs, more and more drivers and teams will get their heads around how these cars are meant to work. They'll iron out some of the pain points, and we'll be talking less and less about the regulation cycle and how they're all about battery management and the various concerns that the drivers currently have without ever having raced these cars on track. All of this to say, we are still early days in these regulations. We haven't made it to Melbourne yet, but I'm cautiously optimistic that we will have some good racing, at least in the first year or two of the regs before the engineers figure out how to make it impossible to pass again. If you have made it this far, thank you for listening to me ramble in my first ever YouTube video. I would like to take a second to talk about the channel. I'll be doing my best to cover updates in Formula One, the race weekends, and any big news coming out, and hopefully learning more along with all of you about my favorite sport. Due to my work schedule and the nature of my work, it may be difficult to set a specific schedule for video releases, but just know that I will be continuing to work on the channel in the background between updates, and I hope to hear feedback from all of you as I dive into the YouTube space. I do plan to add more video and perhaps the camera instead of just doing voiceover, but for the immediate future, I will generally be talking over video clips or slides. Thank you for your time. Like and subscribe to the channel, and stay wet.